At the very top of the show, we watched that special report by Olije Wapera on the declaration of the Mpox virus disease as a public health emergency of international concern. Is this COVID all over again? And how prepared should Nigeria be? What is being done by the federal government to prepare for a worst-case scenario? For all of that, we're now being joined by Professor Oyewale Tomori, who is a senior fellow and professor of virology at the African Center for Genomics of Infectious Diseases at the Redeemers University in Ede, Nigeria. Good morning, Prof. Good to have you join us on the morning show today.
Good morning. Morning. How are you doing today?
Very well, sir. We're good. Good to have you.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk Mpox, sir.
My pleasure, too.
Thank you. Thank you indeed. You know that the WHO has described it as an emergency of international concern. We also know that because of the one single case in Sweden, the European media is already talking about crisis in Africa being imported to Europe. 39 cases already in Nigeria. What else do we know about this Mpox, Prof? And what will be your assessment of the sort of information that we are getting from the government, and how should we be prepared this time around?
Thank you very much. Quite a lot of questions. But let me state from the beginning that before the WHO declared it an international concern, the African Center for Disease Control had already done that as an emergency of continental concern. I think we need to put that in the right perspective, that for the first time, we in Africa have made up our mind that we have a problem in our hand and we have declared it. I think the important thing is, what do we do with that? So yes, WHO has declared it. I think maybe a little bit of history will let you. In the last 1 year, the number of cases have gone up to about 160% of what it was in 2023. About 17,000 cases reported, in the African region, 95% of which are coming from DR Congo. Other countries that also got will be Burundi, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, and of course on the West Coast, Nigeria and Ivory Coast. So it's a major problem. And I'm glad, as I said, that the African government itself decided that we declare it a problem for ourselves before the World Health Organization did that. I think we need to put that in this perspective. To me, it's a reaction that the world has never cared about our problem, and it was time for us to put our own house in order. And to do that, not just declaring, our governments must come out and commit themselves to ensuring that this declaration is not just for nothing. That's number one. On the Nigerian side, of course, our NCDC has told us we have 39 cases. I believe, like everything that we get from many of our data, either in Africa, it is just the tip of the iceberg. You saw the European Union, one case in Sweden, and they say it's a crisis. So I don't know what we're waiting for all these years that we got to this level before we declare a crisis. So it's a major problem. And we need to do something serious about it. Are we prepared in Nigeria? We say we are prepared. But everybody who prepares for an exam says you are prepared for the exam, until the exam comes before we know whether you have passed or not. So we have it. I hope the epidemic doesn't come. It comes to be proved whether we are prepared or we are not that prepared.
All right, then I like the fact that you've actually touched on Nigeria's preparedness, because we're seeing the WHO declaring, the Mpox outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. So given this recent confirmation of 39 cases in the country, what measures should be prioritized to contain its spread in Nigeria, seeing as we're seeing this strain going as far as Sweden and even countries like Pakistan?
Yeah, I think it is important to identify that there are 3 or 4 steps involved with controlling an epidemic. Unfortunately, in Africa, we focus on the last end, which is the vaccine, of which we have no capacity, we have no fund, no nothing. Yet, for what we are able to do, we refuse to do that. For example, basic thing about any disease is for you to detect it, confirm it, isolate the case, and then make sure that it doesn't spread from human to human. That we have the capacity for. That doesn't cost that much money. The money we're wasting in this country will do more than that. But unfortunately, our disease surveillance in Nigeria has been concentrated purely in the hand of the NCDC. In those ancient days, well, let me say in the last 50 or 40 years, each state had its own AP division. Local government had a P division. They were the ones who were doing all these investigations and other things. We have abandoned all that for NCDC, and that's where we are. When a country like Sweden says one case is crisis, what should we call our own with 39 cases? But now we should have declared we had an emergency in our hand. But then we are used to large numbers, so it doesn't really matter. So now that everybody is now saying this is a major crisis, it is for us to put in place the right thing. I know the NCDC has set up task force to do, but usually, you know, we always set up task forces that have no task, that have no force, and that's the problem with us. Now it is time to put our mouth in, where our money, where our mouth is, get out on that place, and the first thing is make people be aware that this is a major problem. People are dying in DR Congo, pregnant women are aborting. So we need to begin to take it seriously in our country and take proper action against it. It must involve the community. That's where the cases are occurring. We must get them involved. We must educate them. We must let them, give them wherewithal so that when they report the case, we can take action. It's not for NCDC to sit down in Abuja and be running all over the country, helter-skelter, collecting samples. Capacity to collect samples, to detect cases should be decentralized to the level where if the community is involved, the local government is involved, and then we can then scale this up before it becomes a major problem. Usually before Abuja knows there is a problem, tens and thousands of cases have occurred or may never be reported. So let's strengthen our community, let's strengthen our local government, let's strengthen at that level to be involved in disease surveillance, disease detection, and then our labs are upgraded to identify and confirm all these cases so that then we can take action. When you get the cases, you isolate them and keep them away from people so that you don't transmit it from one person to another. But unfortunately, we are focusing on vaccine. We don't have the money for the vaccine. Even to get the vaccine now, it's going to take you like 3 or 4 months of negotiation. What are we doing in between that time? Let's do what we can do, what we have the capacity for, what we have the funds for at home, at the local level.
Very much so. Now, you said we don't have the capacity right now to purchase the vaccine, or even if we wanted to, we would not receive it anytime soon. But I want to focus on, because you've spoken very passionately actually about strengthening the local level, and I think I want you to talk to us a little bit about containment strategies for this disease. What are we expecting to see from our government, and what are we expecting to see from people in terms of our government communicating public health to people in a way that they understand, and to make sure that this is information they trust. There's a fear that there might be misinformation coming up that on social media or on WhatsApp due to the nature of the disease and due to fear of a pandemic. So how can the government help prevent that, but also what containment strategy should we be expecting to see?
A consistent announcement to the people, making them aware we have a problem in hand, is one of the first steps. A situation where the NCDC is reporting 39 cases now, because the world declared it a global problem, is not the situation that it should be. We should be constantly informing our people that we have a problem in our hand. This information must be a news, the constant news we hear in Nigeria, our president has gone to this has gone to that. It's not as important as the fact that people's lives are in danger. Any case that occurs anywhere is important. You see the way Sweden reacted to it. We should begin to alert ourselves to know that this is a danger. One life, I mean, how much money do you put on somebody's life? One person dying of this is a severe problem. But we don't regard life too seriously in Nigeria, and that's why. So my talk to the government is that we don't have to wait for WHO to declare that we have a problem. We are to determine a problem in our own hand and then do something about it. More information, more alertness, awareness to the people. This is what happens. For one thing, we don't even know the full reservoir of the disease. And these are some of the messages that our scientists should get involved in and get government funding to begin to look at what are the reservoirs of this disease. Because if you know the reservoir, then you know how to avoid them. If you don't know the reservoir, you don't know whether you are next door to someone that is carrying the monkeypox virus. So detailed research at home on the host and reservoirs of this disease. Secondly, proper information to our people at home. This is what you can, monkeypox, the rash that can be confused with so many other rashes. And that's where our laboratories also come in, to be able to specifically detect and say, yes, this rash is monkeypox and it's not another kind of rash or chickenpox or any other things. So at the same time, of course, we've abandoned our local government. This is where we need to get these people to get involved in the activities. The federal government should, both the governments should commit funding to proper surveillance. And I'm going back to the state level. In those days, 40, 50 years ago, each state had its own epidemiological division that was doing all of this. Today, if you go to many of our states, even the epidemiological division, they don't even have a bicycle to go and carry out an investigation. Yet, when our leaders are going from one place to another, they have 40, 50 cars following their entourage. The tire of one of those cars will buy enough resources for the people to carry out the investigation. These are the areas where we have money, we are misusing our money. We should put our money where our problems are. And one of the problems is diseases. You remember Lassa fever? Every year we keep saying, Lassa fever has come. For the last 50 years, Lassa fever has been with us. What have we done about it? These are some of the things we need to do. Identify those problems where we have the strength. Our people have the talent, the resources, and the knowledge to carry out surveillance. But if you don't give them the resources to do it, of course, the enabling environment, and that's where we have our problem. Put that money where the people have the talent. Not waste your time to say negotiating for vaccines. Yeah, vaccines will come at the tail end. But the important thing is stop the disease where it is. If you stop the disease where it is, you won't be talking about vaccine.
What do we really know about this disease, mpox? Are there details that are out there in the medical circles as to the peculiarities of this disease? I like the fact that you mentioned about could it be are there similarities with monkeypox, with smallpox, chickenpox? But what do we know about it as at this time? How is it contracted? Who's more susceptible? We've heard about the fact that it can even be sexually transmitted. Are there details out there that will be useful to Nigerians at this point in time?
Yes, definitely. There are details that are available, but the information never gets out to the people. That's the problem. Let me get back to the problem. Those of my generation, we know about smallpox. Everybody knows about smallpox. In 1980, it was eradicated, and therefore vaccination stopped. So gradually, there are different types of pox viruses. Everybody has a pox. The cows have their pox, camels have their own, monkeys have their, everybody has their own. But unfortunately, this particular one we call monkeypox, it's actually a wrong name. Most of the cases are found among squirrels, rodents, and things of that nature. That's where you find this what we call monkeypox. Therefore, contact with the wild animals, those kind of things, that's what leads to people getting infected. And then when somebody then gets it, because through the contact, through the rash, the virus, the pus, the pox that shows on the face, the rash and something, contains a lot of virus. And this affects your beddings, any of the surroundings that you have around you. And through this, what you call fomites, somebody else can get infected. So that's the reason why we try as much as possible, when you detect a case, you isolate that case. You practice your infection prevention and control processes so that the health workers have their gloves in their hand and they don't carry it to another person of that nature. So those are the simple, we all know what to do. But some of these things cost a little bit of money. You need money for gloves, you need money to put the patient in isolation, you need money to disinfect and all those kind of things. Again, I keep asking, this is minimal amount of money compared to what our leaders are wasting. We need to keep stressing this, otherwise we miss the point. It's just a minimal amount of money that we require to get all this is in place. That's number one. Number two, once you then know that this is a case, you isolate the person and you keep that person away so that you don't get contaminated through the pus and the things that come from the scabs that will spread the virus on the beds, on the bedding, on the whatever it is they handle and other things like that. So those are the ways. So we know what to do. It's just that we are refused to do it. We refuse, and like I said, costs a minimum amount of money. We can get that done. In the other, now you mentioned the sexual transmission. It didn't used to be a problem. The 2022 cases that we had that was global all over was definitely sexually transmitted. And you can see it popping up in different parts of Europe. Most of our own transmission in Nigeria, in Africa, is more like human-to-human transmission. There's a bit of sexual. Currently, what is happening in DR Congo was actually initiated, expanded through sexual problems. So men having sex with men, the same man having sex with a woman, and so we're spreading it. So a lot of people, so in addition to the things spreading by the normal route of human contact with animals, human with human, there's also the aspect of the sexual transmission, especially in the DR Congo, and where most of the cases are getting. The even worrying thing about it is the fact that there's a new variant of the virus now. You mentioned whether is this under COVID. Unfortunately, this is not a virus that spreads like COVID, but it can be spread through this contact that we have. We now have a new clade, what we call a clade 1B, which is now causing the infection. And these are the result of the human-to-human transmission, affecting pregnant women. People are aborting, and that kind of thing. So we hope we don't get to that level in this place. But that's it. We know what to do. Just put your money where your mouth is, and we can get this done. And I keep saying it that the minimum amount of money that we waste in this country can be, 10% of it or less can be able to solve the problem we're talking about.
Talking about, putting our money where our mouth is, I want us to touch on the comparative risks and then just go into the virological resistance of this strain. Now, given that Nigeria in itself is also dealing with other public health issues, such as the recent cholera outbreak, how much does the risk of mpox compare? Should resources be allocated differently? And also, touching on the virus itself, is there any indication of a virological resistance within the Nigerian population that could either mitigate or exacerbate the impact of this mpox outbreak?
Thank you very much. The basis of all we are talking about, whether cholera, monkeypox, whatever, is the foundation is your surveillance. The foundation is your laboratory to detect. So it's not as if you're going to allocate money specifically for cholera or something. If your surveillance is in good shape, you will detect your cholera. You detect your monkeypox. If your surveillance is in good place, your laboratories will be able to detect. Take, for example, we report 10,000, 8,000 cases of suspected cases of Lassa fever in Nigeria, and every year we're only able to detect 10% of that. What about the 90%? What are they? That looks like Lassa. We need to improve our laboratory diagnosis to be able to know that if we report 8,000 cases, we should be able to give information and say, of these 8,000 cases, 2,000 are Lassa, 1 is cholera, this is this and that. But don't have that. Those are the things we need to improve, first of all. So when we do that, the other things will come into shape. So it's not as if specifically you want to allocate money for cholera or money for monkeypox. It is money for the basic system to be in place to detect these issues so that we know that, what we're dealing with is cholera, what we're dealing with this. If you don't know what you're dealing with, you don't even know how to approach it. So that's number one. And now, let's forget about resistance. So far, there's no resistance. In the days of smallpox, everybody got smallpox. Of course, if you recover from the disease, then you are protected. But now we're seeing a situation in which we are having a virus which last year, the number of cases has increased by 160% over a period of the first 6 months of this year. That I'm talking about DR Congo. And we're seeing new variations of the spread. Again, compound that is the situation of the HIV status of the person. People with HIV and those other diseases are less resistant to this, and they suffer a more severe disease. So we need to look at, we have HIV cases in Nigeria. We have the virus with us. I believe that part of the problem is that our detection, our surveillance system is not strong enough to detect the cases. So we reported 39 cases, but I believe we have more than so cases. Now, let's not forget about the issue of resistance. The only protection, of course, will be if you have vaccine and you're protected about that. But even then, vaccines doesn't last forever. So the most important thing for us now is let's stop the disease before it becomes a problem. And that's back to our surveillance. I keep talking about that because that's the foundation of everything we're talking about. So as to the risk for other people, of course, there's a general risk. You and I don't know where the virus is, what is the host. The people that come with rash, we don't know, we don't have laboratories that will quickly, immediately tell us that this is monkeypox so that we can isolate the person. and then reduce the possibility of spreading between human to human. What is happening in DR Congo, the rate of human-to-human transmission in an environment of possibly HIV infection with the sexual transmission is what is causing what is leading up to the situation in DR Congo that is now spreading into neighboring countries, Uganda, Burundi, Rwanda, even Kenya, as far as South Africa. These are the problems we have in our hands. But if we don't tackle the issue at the foundation, we will continue to repeat the same thing we have been repeating for the last 50 years.
Very quickly before we let you go, because we have run out of time, do we have any update at all on our preparedness for vaccines? You mentioned the fact that that shouldn't be our priority now, but I recall that there was 10 billion naira released during COVID. Are we closer to getting one for ourselves, or do we have to wait for the emergency one that has been approved for use for mpox internationally? Just very quickly, sir.
We are as far away from getting vaccine production in Nigeria as we were in the time of my grandfather. Not because we are not able, but because we have a system, a country that will not focus on what it needs. So your answer is that we are not close to getting a vaccine for monkeypox in this country. And we are going to beg, internationally, the number is even very minimal amount is available. And you can be sure they're going to use it for themselves and not for you.
All right. Professor Tomori, we want to thank you for joining us on The Morning Show and for giving insight into this problem that everybody is worried about. Thank you so much indeed.